AI in Action, a new podcast series from Halldale Group, which looks at how civil aviation, military, and other safety-critical industries are adopting AI in training. In this episode, Andy Fawkes is joined by Margareta Freitas from Thales and Halldale Group editor Marty Kauchak.
Whatever it is that we do with tech, we have to remember that it's there for us. It's meant to be there for us. So the human in the center.
As in the case of AI, it seems like Europe is maybe a little bit further ahead than their American cousins are. But...
AI in Action.
So, good day, everyone. We hopefully have a global audience for this event. This is part of a series that's running the whole year, and it's AI in Action. So we're really interested in, obviously the whole world is talking about AI, but here the focus was really on how AI is actually being used in action across the kind of Halldale portfolio of civil aviation, military and wider safety critical industries. So today we're going to focus very much on competence-based training as well. And don't worry, we're going to talk about what that is for those who don't know. So before we go on, I'll just say, obviously, in terms of who this is aimed for, this is really whether you're in the buy-in stage or the believe-in stage, as I said before our previous event, and whether you're a user of these services or deliver. So it's really much a very broad we're trying to give you, and we're not going to dive in too deep. It's more about making you generally aware of what's going on if you're not already. So our pleasure today to have two great speakers, two expert speakers who are going to help us discuss competence-based training and the role of AI in that. And first of all is Margareta Freitas, who is the innovation lead at Thales, or one of them, I've been told. She has a broad industry background, holding management and product strategy positions in various companies and countries, with a substantial time spent looking at innovative solutions. After starting the energy sector and moving on to telecom and transportation, Margareta is now leading innovation initiatives with a focus on training in civil aviation. And fascinatingly, specifically looking at behavioural and cognitive metrics to evaluate competence in fact-based and fair way. Halldale Group editor Marty Kauchak, some of you probably heard him before, but he's certainly a major contributor in Halldale to the various publications. And he's retired US Naval Captain. He'll probably add to this anything else I've said, but he spent more than 23 years in service on the surface warfare community. He has a great deal of knowledge in this area, and I won't go on. You can see on the website, but he's sees a lot of. Has got an incredibly broad and deep knowledge in this area. So we've got a few sort of questions that we want to run through, and first of all, talk about what we mean by computer-based training, how it is actually being used in this sector. Obviously, we always need to talk about the benefits and also the challenges and looking to the future. So I just want to, maybe Margareta, I could ask you to start this, but when we say competence-based training, could you, for our listeners and viewers, could you explain how you see what competence-based training is and why it's kind of a change from the past, please?
Yes, sure. Delighted to. Competence-based training, in my view, is the answer to the fact that many of the systems that we have today are incredibly complex. So when you have a complex system, and an aircraft is really an excellent example of such a complex system, and you have a critical mission, and you have a team carrying out that critical mission, you have a lot of uncertainties. You don't know where your next problem is going to come from. Not your next serious problem. And that means that you need to look at what is called competences rather than tasks and skills that you're able to carry out. So you add to your classical skills, your technical skills, you add things like looking at decision making, looking at leadership, looking at communication, situational awareness, and things like this, because those will be the skills that you actually need to meet those unforeseen incidences that are a direct result of the complex reality.
That's very clear. Thank you. And why do we see AI as being particularly important with respect to competence-based training?
Yes, that question is maybe a little bit harder to answer. So I'm going to attempt to answer it. I would say that it's really the way we see the AI in this particular case is that we are using it in such a way that you can make it transparent, that you can look at actual events that relate to observed behaviors, so that you make it human, if you see what I mean. You look at the events and you have something like an LLM, or you have something so that you can interrogate the system, and you can ask it natural questions. So the AI and where it is today actually gives us the possibility to not have a black box, in the sense that it is incomprehensible, in the sense that you have a system that dishes up something and you have no idea why it's thinking that. So for me, that type of AI that we are now seeing emerging will help us with this, which is key to complex things like competences.
So it's fascinating. It's putting the human in a human perspective, because it's a large language model.
Yes, I think that this is key to when we go forward with AI in general. It's to not forget that it's there actually to support the human. Whatever it is that we do with tech, we have to remember that it's there for us. It's meant to be there for us. So the human in the center, to me, it's really critical.
Yes, and do you, before we bring in Marty, do you see this as a support to, let's say it's a pilot, just to make it quite an civil aviation pilot? How could you give us an example then of how AI, particularly a large language model, would support their training?
So first of all, when I say large language model, it's to be used in the general mix of technologies that you have. You cannot just use that by itself, because that would not work. It would come up with gibberish, sort of. So yeah, well, it does. So you have to give it a context. You have to use hybrid AI, and you have to use other techniques. And something that is that is really important, it's the data. It's what data are you going to look at, and how to pick the good data that is actually going to help you and help the AI to deliver the correct answer. Your hybrid AI that will have various things related to it, so that it knows which context it is supposed to deliver an answer in.
Marty, would you like to sort of throw in your perspective of how you're seeing this approach to training taking off?
Sure, Andy, thank you. Margareta, thank you for your insights. Just a couple of follow-ups. You had a couple of very interesting comments and statements. In one case, you mentioned communications. You mentioned crew resource management, CRM. It's very interesting with this evolution to competency-based training that those skills, those capabilities are no longer being dismissed as quote unquote soft skills, increasingly important as we go forward with CBT. Another very interesting inroad that you had, Margareta, was mentioning data. So increasingly important for AI. So I guess I would ask you, in your industry capacity, are you maybe seeing too much data out there? Again, recognizing the different sources for it to feed training, whether it be simulators, training devices and such. Is there too much data out there for the training organizations to use?
That's a very good question. So the answer, or my answer to that question, is that you can't just use data like that. It's not because you have a lot of data that you're going to get answers. So in order to develop knowledge from data, you need to know what data is interesting to you. So you need to ask the question first. First, you must know what you're looking for. Searching an ocean of data that you haven't collected for any particular reason is going to be very difficult, at least. Much better to know which question you're asking and what it is that you're looking for more particularly, and then collect the data and go and get that data that is going to be useful for you in that specific context, which is an approach that is really different. So knowing what data you need and where to go and get it, in my view, is really key.
And do you think let's say civil aviation, do you think the industry is, because I guess there's various airlines, there's various simulator manufacturers, is there a sort of an agreement about what data needs to be captured and how?
Andy, and again, I'm going to reference my remarks here, going back to several discussions on the floor off the record that we had at the recent Watts for one of the Halldale events, that that's still somewhat of a contentious issue amongst many in the training, very, very broad training enterprise between the simulator manufacturers, the OEMs, the ATOs and such, really how to best share that data. Again, as we've said, there's copious amounts, just voluminous amounts of data out there being generated in simulator sessions between the data captured during training events on the ground and elsewhere. So again, that's kind of a to be determined, kind of a contentious issue right now amongst the stakeholders in the training enterprise, how to identify and how to best use data for all the different training purposes.
And I guess, is this something specific to competence-based training, or this is in general? Could I ask you, Margareta, is this data issue?
No, the importance of data and the right data, that's I would say that's sort of a generic truth for anything you want to do with AI. It's going to be specifically difficult for competence-based training. But that's another but that's a niche, if you like. That's a very specific niche where I would say one needs to look at human behavior. And so that's data that you may collect in real time during a training session and that you analyze then and there.
I noticed in the work you've been doing about looking at cognitive and behavioral aspects of let's say pilots is the ability to now collect even more data, not just from the simulator, but maybe from biometrics. Is that another angle on all of this?
Yes. So anything that we use in training and that where that pilots are going to be used in training, I think they need to be as non-intrusive as possible. So when you say biometrics, so I'm a little bit unclear to what scope you're giving to the term there, but I would say
their heart rate, let's say.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, as you may know, we're doing we have some projects on the topic. What we are looking at right now at the first level and looking at events and looking at chain of actions and looking at observed behaviors, we don't use heart rate, or we don't use any such physiological characteristics, because we think that they're not needed for the first level of tools that could be used.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, of course, this can be used. That could be used to refine something or make it perhaps more potent than it is today. But generally, if we look at observed behaviors, we simply do that. We observe this. So it is at what is really happening in the cockpit, or in fact in the simulator.
Yes, that's really fascinating. Another question I might have here is there an issue where you might be doing training again as a pilot. Let's make it straightforward. Where some of my training is competence-based, and other parts of my training is not competence-based, and and I suppose that touches on the subject of how do you transition from the way you did it before to a more competence-based approach.
Well, gradually,
Okay.
step by step.
Yeah.
But I think that from if you're looking at civil aviation, I know that EASA, for instance, they have a very specific process for the civil airlines to follow. So that sort of, I'm not sure if it's correct to say that it's regulated, but it's certainly advised how you should do that.
So the regulatory authorities are gradually bringing this approach in, or it is the approach.
The competence-based training or evidence-based training, for sure. The use of AI in that approach, it's not yet regulated. There are advice out on how you can use that, and of course data is used, but perhaps not in the same way that I'm referring to it now. When I'm referring to a more tool-based approach, where you would have data and you would make analysis then and there on top of it, that's something slightly different.
Sure. And Marty, I know you've got experience of how this approach is taking in other sectors. You're seeing the spread of competence-based training into other sectors, and what impact is AI, do you think, having here? Is it accelerating it, or?
Yeah, I think a great impact. Andy, if I can just come back, and I think Margareta hit a very key topic, as did you, talking about AI and the regulators. She mentioned EASA, that I would opine is a bit further ahead than their counterparts in the US, the FAA, on working with AI. I believe the EASA put out its AI roadmap as early as about February of 2020. The FAA is catching up, but I think it's critical to note that FAA in its latest roadmap, I believe issued in 2024, indicated their interest in working with EASA, not only for R&D, but in policy. So again, work in progress, something that we'll have to certainly be monitoring, not only from the industry side at Thales, but what we're doing here at Halldale on how the regulators are coming to grips with AI and hopefully working together. Imagine that, huh? So we'll see if that all happens.
Well, maybe we can use AI to help bring people together. But
Yes, indeed. I want to circle back, Andy, to the original question that you did pose. Certainly, AI is accelerating. CBT is accelerating. It's been interesting to note, maybe in the last 4, 5, 6 months, that we've been observing CBT discussed not only in terms of pilot training in the commercial training enterprise, but as significant, it's being talked about increasingly in increasing terms for the maintainers, ground-based cargo handlers for dangerous cargoes, or trying to incorporate AI into their programs. So a lot of interest, increasing interest in expanding not only the use of AI, but CBT into some of what I'll call the adjacent civil aviation training markets.
Right. And are we seeing, what about the military or more safety and other safety critical sectors? I was always aware the Swedish Air Force had competence-based approach. Yeah. But what about other militaries?
I would put the Europeans out in front of the Americans for competency-based training. And it seems like, again, as in the case of AI, it seems like Europe is maybe a little bit further ahead than their American cousins are. But anyway, no, a lot of work, a lot of activity within the US laboratories on how to not only define competency-based training, but more important, integrate it into their schoolhouses, their instructional design. So again, work in progress. But again, I would offer the opinion that the Europeans are a bit further ahead in using CBT for their everyday learning and training experiences.
Okay, and Margareta, it's kind of indicated it's something that takes place gradually. But looking to the future, how do you imagine training might look in? I know no one knows for sure, so any answer is valid. But let's say at the end of this decade, how might we see training in our safety critical industries?
Well, I do believe that we will have managed to overcome various obstacles, and by taking it gradually and by actually including all the stakeholders. And here, when I'm saying stakeholders, I mean the pilots, the instructors, and all the people that are actually going to use that, because that's really key. I think we will be able to have a training that uses the AI in a good way, in a way that is really helpful and supportive for the stakeholder, to make it fairer, in fact. And this brings me a little bit back to what you asked me, and I realize I only partially answered your question before, what it will mean for pilots and instructors. So I think this will be a support, something. It's meant to put the human in the center, actually, but to be a support and to help the training to be as fair and fact-based as it's possible to be.
That's a fantastic sort of answer to that question. I mean, and we're sort of starting to wrap this up a bit. I mean, Marty, again, how would you say at the end of this decade, in the area that we've been talking about, how would you see most training done this way by then, or it's still patchy?
I would say patchy for a couple of reasons, Andy. First of all, I think to be determined is going to be the amount of funding resources that the U.S. administrations are going to give to the services, military services, and organizations for training. Not quite sure how that's going to fare in the 2026 and beyond bill. But beyond that, I think the services, U.S. military services, really need to determine what is going to be the outcome of using not only competency-based training, but AI. Some at this point are very optimistic, saying that instructors can be replaced in the schoolhouses and such, where other more purists, as I'll call them, are looking to use competency-based training as well as AI for more noble purposes, being providing instant feedback, helping with customized training design. So again, I think there's still some divergent opinions within the U.S. Department of Defense on what is going to be the end result from using not only competency-based training, but AI.
No, I agree. I agree with Marty, actually. I think it will be patchy. I think it will come gradually. There is a debate whether or not it should be, particularly in the military, I think, whether or not it should be automated. There's talk about the virtual assistant and so forth. And so there are these two philosophies out there, and maybe they can be brought together to an overall system that is going to be beneficial.
Fantastic. Well, time has absolutely flown by. I think we've really sort of had a fantastic insight into, firstly, what is competence-based training, because maybe not everyone knows. And certainly, if you want to read more, go to the Halldale website. But also, I think the summary is that AI can be incredibly supportive of competence-based training, but it won't happen necessarily overnight. And obviously, the key role of getting the right data to support this approach, which is indeed true, I guess, of most AI. But in this fast-moving world, we've got to kind of watch the space. So thank you very much, both of you. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.